Welcome to Conspiracy Files. I'm your host, Zoe Parker, and in today's episode, we confront one of the most controversial and enduring allegations in modern American politics. A web of mysterious deaths, shattered lives, and whispered suspicions surrounds one of the country's most powerful political families. The theory is known simply, and ominously, as the Clinton body count. As we trace the dark trail left behind, we ask, coincidence or something far more deliberate? The 1990s were a time of political upheaval, cultural transformation, and a media landscape on the cusp of digital revolution. Bill Clinton, a charismatic yet controversial figure, rose to national prominence as governor of Arkansas before winning the presidency in 1992. His administration, marked by economic prosperity, was also riddled with scandals, investigations, and partisan warfare that would deepen the public's distrust of political institutions. It was within this atmosphere of growing cynicism that the Clinton body count theory began to take root. As early as the mid-1980s, long before Bill Clinton occupied the White House, whispers had already begun to circulate in Arkansas about questionable deaths involving people close to the Clintons, political allies, law enforcement officers, former business partners, and even personal friends. These incidents, often ruled suicides or accidents, were perceived by some as a pattern, not isolated tragedies. The cultural climate of the time helped the theory gain traction. America was transitioning out of the Cold War and into an era of increasing domestic skepticism. Scandals like Iran-Contra and Watergate had eroded trust in government. With the proliferation of talk radio and early internet forums, new narratives found eager audiences beyond the reach of traditional gatekeepers. As right-wing media outlets grew in influence, particularly in response to Clinton's presidency, theories that once might have been dismissed gained mainstream attention. The Clintons' involvement in multiple controversies further fueled suspicion. From the failed Whitewater real estate investment to the death of White House aide Vince Foster, each incident fed into a narrative of calculated secrecy and cover-up. Investigative journalists, political operatives, and amateur sleuths all began to compile lists of suspicious deaths linked to the Clintons, each new name treated as another piece of a sinister puzzle. In this environment, speculation thrived. The combination of real scandals, partisan rage, and emerging digital communication platforms created the perfect storm for the Clinton body count theory to evolve. It wasn't simply about a list of names. It became a narrative of unchecked power, hidden networks, and a deep suspicion that the truth was being carefully buried beneath layers of political influence. As the theory took shape, it expanded rapidly beyond its Arkansas roots. It would come to encompass events and individuals from multiple states, spanning decades. From mysterious plane crashes to suicides under strange circumstances, each new death was absorbed into the narrative, often with little more than circumstantial connections. Critics called it coincidence. Believers called it a cover-up. The 1990s didn't just give birth to a new kind of politics. They gave rise to a new form of conspiracy culture, one that blurred the lines between journalism and rumor, between investigation and innuendo. The Clinton body count theory emerged not just from what was provable, but from what felt plausible to a growing segment of a suspicious and divided public. And as the years went on, the theory would only deepen, fueled by a mixture of fact, fiction, and fear. Among the many individuals connected to the Clinton body count theory, a few names stand out, each shrouded in controversy, speculation, and in some cases, tragedy. These are not simply footnotes in a conspiracy. They are the central figures around which much of the narrative revolves, their lives and deaths woven into a tapestry of suspicion that continues to provoke debate. Perhaps the most cited case is that of Vince Foster, a deputy White House counsel and longtime friend of the Clintons. In July 1993, Foster was found dead in Fort Marcy Park, Virginia, the result of an apparent suicide. Official investigations, including by the FBI, the U.S. Park Police, and independent counsels, concluded that Foster took his own life, driven by depression and the pressures of political life. Yet, almost immediately, conspiracy theories sprang up, suggesting foul play. Questions were raised about inconsistencies in the crime scene photos, missing documents, and fosters alleged knowledge of sensitive White House matters. To skeptics, his death was more than a tragedy. It was a silencing. Another frequently cited figure is Ron Brown, former Secretary of Commerce, who died in a 1996 plane crash in Croatia. Official reports blamed weather and pilot error, but conspiracy theorists pointed to a mysterious circular wound in Brown's skull and the alleged absence of a proper autopsy. Brown was reportedly under investigation for financial improprieties at the time of his death, fueling claims that he was about to testify or expose damaging information. Though the evidence for such a scenario remains speculative, his name became a permanent fixture on conspiracy lists. Mary Mahoney, a former White House intern, was found murdered in 1997 in a Georgetown Starbucks. The brutal nature of the crime, a triple homicide with no sign of robbery, sparked immediate rumors. Mahoney was rumored, without verified sources, to have been connected to internal White House scandals. Some theorists linked her death to the looming Monica Lewinsky investigation, suggesting that Mahoney had knowledge of sexual misconduct within the administration and was planning to speak out. No concrete evidence ever tied her to the Lewinsky affair, but her inclusion in the theory remains a hallmark of its speculative nature. Another name often mentioned is James McDougal, the Clintons' former business partner in the failed Whitewater real estate venture. McDougal became a cooperating witness in the investigation and died of a heart attack in federal custody in 1998. The official cause was natural, but conspiracy theorists have long claimed he was silenced before testifying further against the Clintons. Over the years, the list of names has grown. Seth Rich, Ed Willie, Danny Casolaro, and many others have been cited as part of the alleged trail of bodies. Some deaths occurred under unremarkable or explainable circumstances, while others do raise legitimate questions. But the pattern, according to believers, is too precise to ignore. These were not random tragedies, they argue, but strategic eliminations, an effort to protect secrets, maintain control, and silence threats. Whether these individuals truly share more than proximity to power remains hotly debated, but their names form the backbone of the Clinton body count narrative, each one adding weight to a theory that has resisted fading, no matter how often it's challenged. Supporters of the Clinton body count theory often cite a long list of deaths, accidents, and alleged suicides, drawing connections through timing, proximity, or rumored associations with the Clintons. To them, the number of unexplained or suspicious deaths surrounding one political couple defies coincidence. The list is widely circulated online and in books, with some versions claiming as few as 30 names and others exceeding 80. Each entry is presented as a puzzle piece, suggestive in isolation, ominous when viewed together. One of the central claims is that many of these individuals were either set to testify against the Clintons or were believed to have damaging information. For instance, Victor Razor Secco and his son, both active in Clinton's campaign fundraising, died in a 1992 plane crash. While the crash was ruled an accident, conspiracy theorists argue that the Razors' deaths were part of a pattern of mysterious aviation disasters involving Clinton associates. Then there's the case of Jerry Parks, a former security chief for the Clinton campaign in Arkansas, who was shot dead in his car in 1993. His widow later claimed Jerry was compiling a dossier on Bill Clinton's personal life, allegedly for leverage. She stated that he was frightened in the weeks leading up to his murder. No arrests were ever made in the case. And the alleged dossier was never recovered. The lack of resolution only added fuel to speculation. Danny Casolaro, a freelance journalist investigating what he called the Octopus, a vast conspiracy involving the Inslaw software scandal, government corruption, and political assassinations, was found dead in a hotel bathtub in 1991. His death was ruled a suicide. However, Casolaro had reportedly told friends and family that if anything happened to him, it wouldn't be an accident. He had been investigating ties between intelligence agencies, corporate interests, and political figures, including those close to the Clintons. The eerie timing and his warnings raised immediate red flags. The mysterious death of Ed Willie also plays a prominent role. Willie, a Clinton fundraiser, was found dead in the woods in 1993 from a gunshot wound to the head. his death was ruled a suicide, reportedly connected to financial troubles. On the same day, his wife, Kathleen Willey, claimed that Bill Clinton had sexually assaulted her in the Oval Office. The intersection of timing and scandal made this case especially potent among conspiracy theorists. Perhaps the most widely debated name in recent years is Seth Rich, a young DNC staffer shot and killed in Washington, D.C. in 2016. Though law enforcement concluded it was a botched robbery, theorists claimed Rich was the source of leaked DNC emails published by WikiLeaks. His death became a rallying point, despite denials from his family and no evidence linking him to the leaks. For many, the lack of clear motive and the high-stakes political climate made his death too convenient to ignore. Together, these cases form the core of what believers call a pattern, a litany of silenced witnesses, whistleblowers, and insiders. Each case is riddled with ambiguities, strange timing, or unresolved questions. In the eyes of those who support the theory, these aren't isolated events. They are warning signs of a deeper, hidden machinery, one that protects itself at all costs. A closer examination of the evidence reveals just how much of the Clinton body count theory relies on implication, inference, and circumstantial detail rather than hard proof. Each name on the list is paired with a death that, on its own, may not raise serious questions. But when these deaths are grouped together, the theory gains momentum not from what is proven, but from the accumulation of coincidences. The illusion of a pattern becomes a central device in persuading the believer. Take the case of Vince Foster. Despite 5 official investigations, including one by independent counsel Kenneth Starr, all confirming suicide, doubts persist. Conspiracy theorists often cite details like the lack of soil on Foster's shoes or discrepancies in early crime scene reports. Yet many of these claims have been investigated and debunked. For example, medical examiners confirmed Foster's injuries were consistent with suicide. The narrative of a cover-up relies more on emotional suspicion than on forensic contradiction. Similarly, Ron Brown's death is often used to suggest foul play, particularly the skull wound discovered during his autopsy. The Army pathologist who observed the injury stated it was likely caused by the crash impact, and a proper autopsy was never conducted due to advanced decomposition. Still, theorists frame this as evidence of deliberate omission. The context, Brown flying into hostile weather on a known dangerous approach, is rarely emphasized. Seth Rich's death is another prominent example where claims outpaced evidence. The theory that he was a WikiLeaks source and assassinated for leaking emails has been repeatedly denied by both WikiLeaks and Rich's own family. Forensic analysis by police found no links to the Clintons or political motivation. Yet, his death remains a central talking point in online conspiracy circles, even after Fox News retracted its own report linking him to leaked documents. One of the tools often used to lend credibility to the theory is the sheer volume of names. But when these lists are analyzed, many individuals had only tenuous or indirect connections to the Clintons. In some cases, they were simply employed in federal government roles or had attended campaign events. Others died in ways easily explained: car accidents, heart attacks, natural causes. The pattern, then, becomes a kind of narrative illusion, powered by confirmation bias and selective attention. Cross-referencing these cases against police reports, autopsies, and media coverage often reveals inconsistencies, not in the deaths themselves, but in the claims made about them. The same vague suspicions are applied to multiple cases, regardless of differing circumstances. What emerges is not a trail of covered-up murders, but a pattern of interpreting tragedy through a lens of distrust. While some deaths, such as those of Jerry Parks or Mary Mahoney, remain unsolved or ambiguous, unsolved cases exist across all political and professional spheres. The assumption that any unexplained or suspicious death must be part of a larger conspiracy tied to a single family reflects a particular worldview rather than evidence-based reasoning. In the end, the power of the theory doesn't come from what it proves, but from what it implies. It exploits the space where mystery and motive intersect, drawing strength from the shadows rather than the spotlight. It thrives not on fact, but on the refusal to let a story end with the official version. Skeptics and investigative journalists have long challenged the Clinton body count theory, not just for its lack of hard evidence, but for the underlying assumptions that drive its momentum. At the core of the skepticism is the observation that the theory relies heavily on conjecture, emotional inference, and the amplification of uncertainty. To critics, it exemplifies how easily random events can be reshaped into a sinister narrative when viewed through the lens of distrust. One of the most vocal criticisms comes from fact-checking organizations and journalists who have traced the origins of the theory back to partisan political efforts. The earliest known Clinton death list was compiled by an Arkansas attorney named Linda Thompson in the early 1990s. Her list, which started with 24 names, circulated via fax and mail before going viral in the early days of the internet. Thompson had no formal investigative background, and many of the claims she included lacked corroboration. Yet her list was treated by many as gospel, growing in length and intensity with each new iteration. Mainstream media outlets have investigated some of the more high-profile deaths and found little to support foul play. In many cases, they uncovered a clear cause of death, personal struggles, or medical conditions that had nothing to do with politics. The inclusion of people who died of heart disease, plane crashes, or suicide is framed by skeptics as a misuse of statistics and a misunderstanding of probability. In a nation of over 300 million people, and among hundreds of Clinton associates over decades, some unexpected deaths are inevitable. Experts in psychology and sociology often point out the cognitive patterns that fuel conspiracy thinking. The human brain is wired to seek meaning in chaos, to link events that may be unrelated in an effort to make sense of the world. This is known as apophenia, the tendency to perceive connections and patterns where none exist. The Clinton body count theory, in this view, is not a revelation of a cover-up, but a reflection of the mind's natural inclination towards story-making, especially in times of political or social stress. Political analysts argue that the theory is also a product of the hyper-partisan landscape in which it evolved. The 1990s were marked by intense polarization, and conspiracy theories became tools in the broader battle for public opinion. To attack the Clintons with such a dramatic and dark accusation was to frame them not as political opponents, but as existential threats. In that context, the theory became more than just a curiosity. It became a weapon. Even within the conservative political sphere, not all figures have endorsed the theory. Some commentators have distanced themselves from the more extreme claims, warning that the spread of baseless allegations undermines legitimate oversight and political accountability. The danger, they argue, lies in blurring the lines between credible critique and paranoid fiction. The Clinton body count theory is, to skeptics, an elaborate illusion, one that uses real names and real tragedies to tell a story that may feel true, but which collapses under rigorous scrutiny. It illustrates how, in the absence of trust, people often reach for the extraordinary to explain the uncomfortable, and while it may offer momentary clarity, it often does so at the expense of truth. The endurance of the Clinton body count theory reveals more than a thirst for scandal. It speaks to a deeper cultural anxiety about power, accountability, and the nature of truth in American democracy. For many, the theory represents more than a string of suspicious deaths. It reflects a growing belief that political elites operate in a realm beyond consequence, shielded by wealth, influence, and institutional protection. This belief has only intensified as public trust in political institutions continues to erode. Surveys over the past few decades show a steady decline in Americans' confidence in government, the media, and even law enforcement. In that vacuum of trust, conspiracy theories flourish. The Clinton body count offers a simple, if disturbing, explanation that justice is not blind, but bought, and that those who threaten the powerful often meet unnatural ends. Psychologically, theories like this allow people to process complex events in a more digestible form. Rather than accept that tragic deaths may be random, senseless, or rooted in mental illness or personal turmoil, it's more satisfying to imagine a master plan at work. The theory offers the illusion of clarity. Every mystery has a culprit, and every death a motive. It's a narrative where nothing is accidental, and where the world's messiness is restructured into a dramatic arc of hidden battles and silent assassins. The Clinton body count theory also dovetails with broader narratives of government overreach and deep state paranoia. In that worldview, the Clintons are not merely politicians, but figureheads of a clandestine machine that manipulates global affairs, eliminates threats, and rewrites history. It is a worldview shaped by decades of political disillusionment, economic inequality, and institutional betrayal. From Watergate to the Iraq War, from financial collapses to the erosion of civil liberties. Technology has further amplified these anxieties. The rise of the internet, and later social media, has made it easier than ever to construct and distribute alternative realities. In this environment, fact-checking becomes less effective because belief is no longer anchored in evidence, but in identity. To believe in the Clinton body count isn't just to doubt the official story, it's to affirm a worldview where the powerful are always hiding something, and where questioning is a form of resistance. The cultural implications are far-reaching. The normalization of conspiracy theories like this one has eroded the distinction between investigative journalism and speculation, between evidence and innuendo. It has created a space where every public figure, particularly those who wield power, becomes a target for suspicion, and where the boundary between criticism and character assassination is increasingly difficult to discern. Ultimately, the Clinton body count theory reflects a society grappling with the limits of transparency and the failures of accountability. It's a symptom of a larger crisis, one in which the public, starved for truth and disillusioned with institutions, turns to darker, more sinister narratives to fill the void. Whether or not the theory holds any merit becomes secondary to what it represents, a cultural indictment of a system many believe has stopped serving the people it was designed to protect. The influence of the Clinton body count theory extends beyond the fringes of internet forums and late-night talk radio. Over time, it has seeped into mainstream political discourse, coloring perceptions, fueling media narratives, and blurring the lines between investigative inquiry and conspiratorial entertainment. Its impact is felt not just in who believes it, but in how it has changed the way people consume information and interpret political reality. In the early days, the theory lived in pamphlets, underground publications, and early digital bulletin boards. But as cable news grew and talk radio became more politically charged, the narrative found powerful amplifiers. Hosts like Rush Limbaugh and others alluded to the theory or referenced it directly, often with a veneer of plausible deniability, posing questions without making explicit accusations. This rhetorical technique allowed the theory to travel far and wide without requiring its promoters to fully commit to its truthfulness. With the rise of the 24-hour news cycle and later social media, the theory morphed into viral content. Memes, infographics, and clickbait articles reduced complex or tragic deaths to single-line insinuations. Another Clinton associate found dead. The repetition of this formula helped create an impression of frequency and inevitability, regardless of the details behind each case. What mattered was not the truth, but the story. And stories, once embedded in the digital bloodstream, are hard to remove. Media coverage has had a complicated relationship with the theory. Major outlets often avoid direct engagement, but will occasionally run segments debunking the most high-profile claims, especially in the wake of controversies like the Seth Rich murder or renewed attention during election seasons. Ironically, even attempts to debunk the theory can give it more visibility, reinforcing the belief among some that they are trying to cover something up. The theory has also found renewed energy in the age of partisan digital influencers. On platforms like YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, and podcasts, commentators who position themselves as outsiders or truth-tellers often resurrect the Clinton body count as proof of systemic corruption. In this new media ecosystem, conspiracy becomes content, monetized, and algorithmically amplified. Each new mysterious death or political scandal is a chance to reintroduce the theory to a new generation of skeptics and cynics. Beyond media, the theory has influenced political campaigns and public discourse in more subtle ways. Opponents of the Clintons have used it to cast a cloud over their legacy, painting them not only as politically controversial, but as morally dangerous. Supporters of the theory often argue, where there's smoke, there's fire, even if that smoke comes from years of rumor rather than confirmed evidence. The Clinton body count has thus become more than a theory. It is a symbol, a cultural shorthand for distrust in elites, institutions, and official narratives. It reflects how deeply conspiracy has been woven into the fabric of political storytelling, and it underscores how, in the modern information age, perception often matters more than proof. Whether believed or dismissed, the theory has left an indelible mark on how Americans process power, tragedy, and the possibility that something, anything, might be hidden just out of reach. At the outer edges of the Clinton body count theory lie its most speculative and fringe interpretations, versions of the narrative that venture beyond political intrigue and into the realm of global conspiracy, occult symbolism, and deep state mythology. In these more extreme circles, the Clintons are not merely politicians surrounded by a suspicious number of deaths. They are portrayed as central figures in a hidden network of control, bound by secrecy, ritual, and untraceable power. One recurring theme in fringe versions of the theory is the idea that the deaths are not just about silencing witnesses, but are ritualistic in nature. These interpretations often reference ancient symbols, numerology, or alignments with specific dates, suggesting that certain deaths were timed to coincide with occult calendars or astrological phenomena. The suggestion is that these events are not random, but deliberate signals or sacrifices within a larger framework of hidden belief systems. Other theories claim that the Clintons are merely the visible tip of a global pyramid, a front for a secret cabal that includes powerful elites across governments, corporations, intelligence agencies, and financial institutions. In this version of the narrative, the Clinton body count is not about protecting political secrets, but about maintaining control over a vast and ancient power structure. These ideas often overlap with other theories, such as those involving the Bilderberg Group, the Illuminati, or even extraterrestrial influence. The rise of QAnon breathed new life into these ideas, linking the Clintons to child trafficking rings, underground military operations, and a coming Great Awakening. Although no credible evidence supports these claims, they have gained massive traction online, blending decades-old conspiracy theories into one sprawling narrative of good versus evil. In this worldview, every unexplained death becomes another data point in a cosmic war, and the Clintons are portrayed not just as corrupt, but as agents of malevolent forces. There are also technological angles introduced in fringe circles. Some believe the Clintons have access to advanced surveillance systems, AI algorithms, or even classified weaponry, capable of inducing heart attacks or suicides remotely. These ideas, while speculative, are framed as the inevitable outcome of secret government projects and decades of unchecked power. Once again, the pattern is emphasized. People who get too close, speak too loudly, or know too much tend to disappear. Even time travel and interdimensional theories occasionally make appearances in the deepest corners of the conspiracy world. In these narratives, the Clintons are either time-manipulating elites preserving their dynasty, or puppets of a higher intelligence orchestrating a long-term agenda across human history. While such ideas exist on the extreme fringe, their inclusion underscores how malleable and expansive the Clinton body count theory has become. What ties these fringe theories together is not just distrust of the Clintons, but a broader belief that the world is governed by forces far beyond what we are told. The details shift, the players change, but the core remains the same: hidden hands moving pieces behind the curtain. For those who subscribe to these beliefs, the Clinton body count isn't the end of the story. It's the entry point to a far deeper and more unsettling world. The Clinton body count theory stands as a mirror, reflecting not just the suspicions surrounding a single political family, but the deeper tensions embedded in American culture. Over decades, it has transformed from a whispered accusation in Arkansas to a sprawling narrative reaching every corner of the internet. Whether viewed as a genuine investigation, political weapon, or cultural myth, its evolution tells us as much about ourselves as it does about those it targets. At its heart, the theory is rooted in the power of pattern recognition. It draws its strength not from hard evidence, but from the emotional resonance of tragic coincidence. Names, dates, and causes of death are strung together to form a chilling mosaic, one that appears persuasive because it speaks to a broader unease, that those in power are never truly accountable, and that beneath the surface of public life lurk darker truths too dangerous to acknowledge. For some, the theory is an indictment of a political dynasty they see as emblematic of corruption. For others, it's a symptom of a society that has lost faith in its institutions and seeks answers in the shadows. The rise of the internet and social media has only intensified this divide. In a world where information is instantly accessible but rarely trusted, conspiracy theories like the Clinton body count offer clarity amid chaos, purpose amid confusion. But this clarity comes at a cost. The theory has caused real pain for the families of the deceased. Individuals who have had their loved ones reduced to bullet points in online lists, their deaths reinterpreted to fit a narrative they never consented to. Investigators, journalists, and even fact-checkers who challenge the theory are often dismissed as part of the cover-up, further entrenching believers in their convictions. In this way, the theory becomes self-sustaining, impervious to evidence, and resistant to contradiction. Its legacy is not just one of suspicion, it is one of polarization. In modern political discourse, the Clinton body count has become shorthand for broader conspiratorial thinking, a gateway into other theories about election fraud, government manipulation, and elite criminal networks. As the story is told and retold, reshaped by each new generation, it continues to fuel division, mistrust, and a profound skepticism toward reality itself. Yet the theory also reminds us of something elemental, our craving for stories that explain the inexplicable. In the Clinton body count, we see the timeless human impulse to connect dots, assign motive, and uncover hidden meanings. Whether those connections are valid or imagined, they reflect the fear that the world is not as it seems, and the hope that exposing the unseen might restore some sense of control. In the end, the Clinton body count may never be proven, nor fully debunked in the eyes of its believers, but it will remain part of the cultural lexicon, a dark parable for the digital age, and a cautionary tale about how we interpret tragedy, assign blame, and navigate a world where truth is increasingly contested, and where belief often triumphs over proof. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Zoe Parker, and this has been another episode of Conspiracy Files. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you would like to support the show, subscribe to Conspiracy Files on Spotify. The link is in the description. Subscribe now.